Happy Friday. How are y'all doing?
Happy
Happy
Friday.
Friday.
We made it. I can't believe it's already December. So yesterday I went to my wife's holiday party and it was the first holiday party that they were having in 3 years. And it hadn't occurred to me that it had been 3 years since things were normal. Um, so it's just crazy how fast time flies, especially this year. Like I feel like 2022 was gone in a blink. So happy to
It
be
really
here.
was. It really was.
Yeah,
Happy to
I feel
be
like
here
the
also.
last 3 years have been either like felt like a blink of an eye and at the same time also felt like 100 years.
The longest thing ever. Yeah, no, for
Time is
sure.
weird.
Yeah. Well, all right. Let's do good news stories. So we all go around and we share something personal or work related from the past week or two. And just to kick things off, I can go first. So, speaking of reflecting on the last 12 months, um, the other day I was looking. So Stephen and I have this tracker that we look at, and there's a bunch of different numbers that we're tracking every single week related to the podcast. And I was reflecting on the last 12 months for the Modern People Leader, and it just made me so proud to see all of the progress that we've been able to make in that time frame. So we've put out 36 episodes. I think we posted over like 175 posts on social. So a lot of time posting on LinkedIn. We formalized the business as an LLC, and we've 3x'd our listenership. And all of this is thanks to the kind and generous people leaders like you that have given us an hour of their day, sometimes multiple hours of their day, to come on to our show and share their stories and ideas. So just wanted to say thank you to everyone that's listening and to all of our past and future guests and to you.
Yes. Ditto to everything Daniel just said.
That's
Who wants to
awesome.
go next?
I can go next. I'm going to go with a personal win. So, travel has always been a big part of my life. I spent a year traveling around the world. And so, the last couple of years of having so many COVID restrictions has been a little bit challenging. But my husband and I went to London for a long weekend this past weekend, which coming from Colorado is a pretty long flight. But it was just so nice to feel the energy of like a huge city and get to experience different cultures and people. And so I have been on cloud nine all week, despite being a little jet lagged.
Oh, and London is such a beautiful place during the holidays as well. It's just a really cool place to be.
Yes, London does the holidays right. I had never been during the holiday season, and every single storefront window is decorated as if it's like Bloomingdale's on Fifth Avenue of New York.
Exactly, exactly.
So I
Wow,
have to
that's
follow
awesome.
up on that. So what's your favorite spot that you've traveled to in the last 12 years?
Mm. So I did this program called Remote Year where you travel with a group of people. So I traveled with 60 people and you work remotely. So at the time I was running my own coaching consulting business and you spend a month living in each city that you go to. So you really get that like immersive feeling of like, where do I go grocery shopping? What's it like to actually live here? And so I would say probably Portugal is at the top of my list from like a recommendation for definitely going and travel to Portugal, but then also as a place that I could see myself living in full time.
I feel like
Wow.
Portugal has emerged as like a top travel destination in the last year or two. So I'm definitely adding that to the list.
Definitely do.
Yeah. All right. Sorry,
So
I interrupted you, Stephen.
it's okay. It's okay. My good news. So I'm going to go personal also. I have broken the seal and started holiday shopping, and it feels really good because the older I get, it just all stresses me out so much. And my daughters are getting older, so it's more complicated. But I made progress, and that's good news. So
Awesome. I am not in the same boat starting this weekend.
I'm usually there.
Yeah.
I'm usually there, but
Luckily, Tori has done a little bit of thinking about the gifts, but
oh,
I need to step up here in these next few days. All right, Kelly. So walk us through your story and how that led to you becoming the VP of people at BuiltIn. Like, give us the quick career story.
Sure. So I went to college to be a high school history teacher, and in my last semester, like had like a 22-year-old crisis and realized it wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in business, but I didn't know exactly what. And at the time, and I'm dating myself here, HR wasn't really a major, so I just had no idea. And so started. My mom, thankfully, is an executive and introduced me to a couple of different people to pick their brains, and I discovered HR, took an internship, and that led me down this path of the people space. And for me, it was perfect combination of utilizing all of the things that I loved most about teaching, being able to inspire, build relationships, see the gifts in others, and help guide them along a path. And so throughout my 15 plus years in the people space, I've been on both ends of the spectrum of like super corporate companies with massive teams and a lot of structure, move kind of slow, to being the first HR person hired at a startup. And along the way, I've learned that I like to operate in the middle and work for companies that have a really strong foundation when it comes to culture and people programming, but they're going through rapid growth. And so how do you build strategies to retain and attract top talent? And I've been with BuiltIn for 3 years. I've been our CEO, Maria Katras, just a huge fan, being in Chicago and learning about BuiltIn is, where BuiltIn first started. So when they opened up, they closed Series C funding and opened up this VP role. And I was all over it and just thrilled to have the opportunity to work for a company that I was a customer of 3 times. And then also for a leader that I had just been so inspired by for years.
So I know that this use case that I'm about to tell you about is not what BuiltIn was built for.
Yeah.
But 5-6 years ago, when I was working for Steven at Workify, we used to build account lists that we were going to target on the sales side by going to BuiltIn. So
I've heard that many times.
Yeah. So, if we were going to target all of the tech companies that were 200 plus employees in Austin or Chicago or New York, we would go to the different BuiltIn sites and, basically scrape that list and put together our sales list. So yeah, I'm getting flashbacks to
blast from the past. Yeah,
yeah,
I remember that was like a goal of mine. We're like, oh, these are
yeah,
all the great leads.
Yeah. So I know that's not the core use case for BuiltIn or what BuiltIn's known for. So can you give us like the quick elevator pitch that you would give to somebody for BuiltIn on what you all do?
Yeah. So I'll describe it as if I'm describing it to my family who's like not in the tech space. So if you are a tech professional, and that doesn't mean that you have to be an engineer, but it means like you want to work for a tech company, and majority of companies out there right now are tech companies or have a focus on tech and growth. And you want to find a really great place to work for. And you don't want to just follow whatever their spiel is on LinkedIn or their careers page. Like you want to hear from a third party why it's great to work there. You could read content that BuiltIn puts out that says, if I'm a salesperson and I want to know the top 10 companies for sales development programs, I might go to BuiltIn and find an article on that, and then be able to have a target list of companies that I want to apply to. And so we have a double-sided marketplace. So we have users that come to BuiltIn to be able to learn about companies, have professional development, and then the other side being the customers that we represent, rapidly growing tech companies who are trying to target those passive candidates out there. So it's more complicated than that, but that's kind of it in a nutshell for folks to understand.
Yeah, no, that great explanation. So why should me and Steven be jealous that you get to work at BuiltIn?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons. I would say at the core, we deeply care for humans. And so that means a multitude of facets. It is the users that we're bringing on board, driving to the platform, that are looking for more than just a 9 to 5. It's the companies that we get to represent. Our customers are like HR and TA professionals who, I'm biased, but like the best people to work for as your customers, to be able to tell their story and help bring in talent. But then also internally for the folks that work at BuiltIn, we have a really strong community. We care deeply. Our philosophy is people first. So we go people, strategy, execution. And so everything we do at the forefront is because of people. And we like to say that we care about the whole human. So that means the personal, the professional, and everything in between. I think a lot of companies were forced to shift into like caring about the whole human when COVID hit and everybody was working from home and living from home. But that has always been our philosophy from the very beginning, because if you're developing and caring for the whole human, that means that like the personal and professional part of our employees are what are going to be connected to BuiltIn, and not just the professional piece.
Yeah, and I can attest to how great working with HR professionals has been. Part of the reason I chose to double down on HR was because of the experience that I had meeting people like you. So yeah, I think that you picked a good company.
Thanks. I would agree.
Yeah, it seems like you guys have a lot of fun, that's for sure. And so, like a lot of companies, you shared with us that BuiltIn has gone through some changes this year. I think we've all had a change and flex, and with change comes opportunity, especially, in my opinion, in the people function. And in my experience, downturns always give the gift of forcing you to rethink how your function operates and really take, look at the hard truths, as I like to call them. And so I'm curious, as someone who's been in the space for a while, what do you think the future of the people function will look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's a great point. Change brings opportunity. And I'm always thinking of what's next for the people function. I think it's really easy, especially post-pandemic, for HR professionals to get stuck in like, what are the immediate fires that we need to solve, because they have been so rapid. But for me, thinking about like, what does the future of work look like, and how do I create a department and a function that evolves with that and can best support it? And so I think like there's some really, like I have a deep fascination for a lot of thought leaders out there who are putting out content around like what the future of HR is going to look like. I think David Ulrich's like a really good example of that. And I like have a personal kick that I like to read all of that and then design a different model, right? Like take all of their predictions and be like, and here's the 10th option that you didn't think about. Yes. So we had implemented an HRBP model a couple of years ago, and now you're really seeing like most teams are shifting into that approach, and we've just scraped it in the last couple of months, and we're developing a new model moving forward that I'm really excited about, that will allow us to adapt and support our people in the most like evolutionary way possible. And I'm happy to dive into that because it's been something that I've been really passionate about and excited for. And I also think something that is a little bit different from what I've seen.
Yeah. Before we do that, I mean, were there aspects of the people function that you felt were holding you back? I mean, I'm just curious, like what was the tipping point for you?
I don't know if it was holding back as much as it wasn't allowing us to truly like run at full speed. And I think that just naturally being a support function, right? Like over the last 2 years or so, HR has really gotten a strategic seat at the table, but for so long, it was really thought of as a support function. And so thinking about when you go through economic downturns, first functions to get hit are support functions. And so how am I making sure that my department is not viewed as that support function and really a true strategic partner that says like, we are mission critical to get through change, like all of the change management that needs to happen, like upskilling our employees, retaining our employees, attracting employees when we, start hiring rapidly again, all of those things. It's like almost like HR was functionality to date was standing in the way of what it could be in the future.
Makes complete sense. And so now, yeah, I would love to hear more in terms of where you're going. Like, where did you even start? Like, how have you, what does the structure of the team look like? Share with us more. Share more with us. Excuse me.
Yeah. So to take a step back, one of my superpowers, and I would say this comes from going to school to be a teacher, is being able to like look at talent, whether it's on my team or across the entire company, and identify opportunities, like see a special skill set and know that that's something that could be deeply developed, that the person will be really strong at and also be really passionate about. So my team, I have one person on my team who I've worked with, this is our third company together, and she can attest to that. Like sometimes I will throw things at her, give her stretch assignments that she had no desire originally to do, and along the way is like, wow, I'm good at that. And I find it really interesting. So I think for people leaders, especially, to be like always looking for those little gems around what else can my people be doing? How else can I be stretching them? Is a really good place to start. From there, though, I think, you know, when the economic downturn first started, probably like early summers when we started seeing a lot in the news about companies starting to do RIFs, natural reaction is like, you stop hiring. Okay. If you stop hiring, you don't need recruiters. All over the place right now, we are seeing just like recruiting teams getting wiped across the board.
It's crazy. It is crazy.
It is
on like people, like recruiters begging for jobs on LinkedIn, especially something about this past week. And you just see how bad the situation really is.
Yes. And, you know, recruiters are in super high demand when things are good. Like it took us over 6 months at the beginning of the year to hire another recruiter because they were just flying off the market, right? Like they were in such high demand. And so now all of these companies are going through and they're letting go of their recruiting teams. And at some point, and no one knows when, but at some point, the market's going to pick back up, or people are going to leave and you're going to have to backfill. And there's so many companies whose recruiting teams are just demolished right now, and they're not going to be able to support that. Or the market's going to open back up, and then everyone and their mother is going to be looking for recruiters, and it's going to be so hard to try to recruit them. And so we took this take at the beginning of COVID. We did a tiny riff. You know, no one knew what was really going to happen. And I looked at the time, we only had one recruiter, and I said, like, I think that they can do so much more. And we began kind of like pitching this in built-in community chats with other HR leaders around how do you really utilize your TA team more than just attracting and hiring talent. And so one of the things that we put in place at that time was that our recruiting function was also going to own onboarding. And so if you think about it, truly from a candidate experience, which is something that we really, really emphasize, into employee experience, it makes sense that that recruiter is going to carry that through. So like especially like a year ago, everybody was a passive candidate. No one was really actively looking. So you're reaching out to people, you're building that rapport, you're understanding what their core desires are, what they're looking for, like what is going to excite them. And you're attracting them to be like, we can offer you all these things. And you're understanding the dynamics of what's important to them. And then at most companies, they come on board and they're like, here you go, we're just going to hand you off to HR, who has never talked to you yet, and like is now going to curate your first 90 days. Well, for us, we're like, this is just a no-brainer that we're going to have the recruiter carry that forward. And what also is really great about that is we do intake meetings before every opening. So it's when the recruiter sits down with the hiring manager and says, like, tell me what you're looking for, what are the goals, et cetera. And so that was just an easy translation into having our recruiters help develop onboarding plans and really building out the intake process. So really forcing our hiring managers to say, okay, truly, like, what are the 30-day goals, 60-day, 90-day? And for us too, that elevated the caliber of talent that we were able to bring on board, because there was total clarity around expectations and roles. And so that was the piece we introduced that at COVID. And then when we went through our own riff at the end of this summer, beginning of the fall, we actually shifted it even further. And so now our TA team is also doing exit interviews. And so they're like the face of the offboarding process, so that they can carry forward, like to understand why the person is leaving, what gaps may exist, taking that into the intake meeting and being like, this individual left and here are the drivers. If you were to backfill, like, what are you looking for? And then just carrying that message even further. And so for us, we've just seen, it's hard to kind of like track, but just it's a feeling of like a more fluid, meaningful process that we've been really excited about.
Wow. Yeah, there's so many pieces of that stuck out to me that I want to dig into a little bit. And so,
Mhm.
going back to the beginning. So, would you say that some companies out there are cutting too deep when it comes to their talent acquisition teams, or their like mistakes that could hinder the business in the future? That's kind
Um,
of what I'm hearing in this.
I don't know if it's a mistake as much as it is a missed opportunity.
Okay.
Because I think, it's hard making those decisions, and it's pretty straightforward to look across the board and say, like, what are all of the roles? Like, okay, if we're not hiring, we don't need recruiters, but then you're not assessing, like, what are the other skills that this individual possesses? And not to say that, like, if you look across the board and you only save your top performers, that also creates a challenge. But I think thinking a little bit more organically around what are some other things that they can do. I've heard some of my peers share, like, recruiting sourcers, they shifted into SDR roles. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the profile of a recruiter at its core is a salesperson. So I've also seen some recruiters shift into sales roles. And so even like talking to my recruiting community, like, it can be really scary for them knowing that inevitably throughout their career, they're going to see a multitude of economic downturns. And so, like, how do you make your position even stickier? I think inevitably there's always going to be a recruiting specialization, but like, how do you adjust so that when the market does bounce back, you are ready to fly and you're not spending 3 months, 4 months, 5 months trying to hire really strong recruiters?
I love that. And earlier you mentioned that you scrapped your HRBP model and are transitioning to something else. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So I think for me, the HRBP model was simple because it created clarity for employees to know, like, who do I go to? Like, who is my HRBP? I know no matter what the question is, like, I know that this is the person that I can go to, and it removes any sort of like confusion and creates an easier employee experience. I think for us, my team was impacted because of our RIF. And so I had to rethink it. And it just wasn't feasible for us to continue the HRBP model. And so I just thought, like, all right, what is the new evolution of what we need? And I think a recommendation that I would make to not just people leaders, but any leader out there who is thinking about building their team, having to do a RIF, assessing structure, really needs to take a step back and look at the roles and not the humans, because you're removing a bit of the bias and you're thinking about, like, okay, what are the roles and the functions that I need in order to drive success? And so looking at that, I looked at our core needs as from a people strategy standpoint over the next year, 2 years. And so for us, it's not going to be dissimilar to what other people leaders are going to say. It's really about, like, developing and upskilling our talent, retaining our talent, and creating, like, really high performing teams. And a big part of that is manager development. And so what I did, my director of TA, her role is now shifting into owning all of TA still, but then also talent development and talent management. And so we're going back to a little bit more of, like, separation of, like, functional specialties, but broader in that sense. So TA has, like, a strong ability to assess skills, to be able to sell and drive engagement, and to create clarity around expectations. That can very easily transfer into supporting current employees, partnering with managers, understanding, like, what's driving the individuals on the team, coaching them through those performance challenges or opportunities, and, like, being connected to understand how to dig into employee desires when they're thinking about development. And so that's something that I'm really excited about being able to implement. And we're switching more, rather than having HRBP support a specific function, we're doing it from a level perspective. So I have all leadership partnerships. Then we have our director of talent is owning all manager director. And then we have a senior director of of HR and inclusion who owns all of people ops and any inclusion programming, and then any future programming that may be a new thing that we introduce.
So in marketing, something that I'm seeing more frequently on LinkedIn and people writing articles about is the importance of being a T-shaped marketer. And what it sounds like I'm hearing is you're trying to build a team of T-shaped HR professionals, and not only having them specialize in whatever it is that they're really good at, but allowing them to stretch themselves and see different aspects of the of HR. That way that they're more sticky and they're more valuable. And the next time there is an economic downturn, you can say like, hey, all of these people are super valuable. I don't know if we can afford to lose any of them. And I think that that's a really good way of looking at it when building a team. I think it's so easy to get stuck in the mindset of, here are the 4 or 5 different roles that we need, and here's what they do. And that's, I don't know. I feel like not only does that not work, but what's required from those roles is so different than it was 2-3 years ago, even. So
and there's also just a significantly deeper emphasis on experience. So thinking about, I think most teams at top companies to work for have really nailed the employee experience. But if your recruiting function is not like immersed into the rest of your people function, it's really hard for them to curate a consistent candidate experience. Like, you can make it all fluffy, but that when those candidates come on board, it's not necessarily fluid into the employee experience. And so for us, it just creates an opportunity for literally like that just to be one entire experience and not separated parts. And it helps us to ensure that our new hires have greater clarity around what it's like to work at BuiltIn, what expectations are for the role. Like, we do onboarding surveys at 15 and 45 days and then a 90-day review to just ensure, like, do people feel like they're in the job that they were pitched to during their recruiting process? Do they have clarity around expectations? Do they know who to go to? Do they know how to grow? And so we've seen an uptick in those positive responses with this model.
So awesome. I'm excited to stay in touch and hear how the changes need to go. As we look toward 2023, what do you think will separate the best people teams from everyone else, with the expectation of difficult times ahead? I guess that's the only caveat I'll throw in there. In your mind, what do you think are the qualities of the best people teams over the next year?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to balancing reactive versus proactive. And 2020 forced us all, everyone in the people space, to be almost 100% reactive, right? Like, the pandemic hit, we had made a really fast decision about going remote. The beautiful thing that came out of the pandemic was the open sourcing that started happening within the HR field. I think, like, historically in my career, it was like, you never wanted to share your strategies because then your employees might leave and go somewhere else. And now it's just like the amount of things that get shared are so incredible. But everyone was like, oh my God, I have this fire, I need help, right? Like, reaching out to the HR community. And I think we're still kind of in that mindset a little bit. It's hard once you get into like putting out fire mode. You're just like, you're getting a lot of adrenaline from like fixing things fast. And it's a lot harder to slow down and be strategic and proactive about things. And so making sure, I would say, the teams that will be most successful are the ones that are balancing that really delicately of, you still want your people to feel supported and to feel like you are there if they have a challenge, but you're also taking the time and forcing this space to have strategic planning, to implement programs, to implement structures that will prevent those fires in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think that the fires in that way of working just really slows your velocity. And we talk a lot about, in product teams, engineers, about velocity and trying to achieve like the optimal velocity. And agile, funny enough, has been a buzz in HR for the last few years. I don't feel like we've quite found exactly how to like truly adopt, the agile way in HR, but I think we're getting better at it. But in my mind, it's the fires that slow you down. And in a time where I think, moving to your point, like moving quickly, and you need to be measured, right? And you need to be intentional, but can really be the difference in like 2 quarters of a really tough economic environment. And I fear that a lot of companies are going to find themselves in the middle or back half of the year still trying to implement all the changes that they know they need to implement, in order to get through the tough time. And that's just my opinion, but I think that's why what really resonated with what you shared is that I think those fires like really prevent you from being able to think strategically and being able to kind of get the velocity you need to move your people team and help the business move.
I mean, I totally agree. And I would say what's really challenging is even if HR has adopted that mentality, you still have like a whole outlet of customers out there, and like our employees and our leaders being our customers that might not be on board with that same philosophy, or like might have to go through a philosophical shift about thinking about the people function as a whole and how they support. And that will just take time. And it will also take people leaders out there who can take their leaders on that journey to understand, like, here's where we came from, here's where we are today, and here's the vision of what we're going for. And that may mean that the way that we're partnering with you is going to change a little bit, but here's what you're going to get out of it. And so, actually like having to take a very marketing approach to influencing and selling that to your customers, and your customers being your employees. So it will be an evolution, and I'm really excited for that evolution and for that to continue to happen.
So I guess just building off of what Stephen was saying, how, being a first mover gives you a big advantage in the market. It feels like BuiltIn has been pretty early in a lot of decisions that y'all have made. So you mentioned that you were one of the first ones to go fully remote. I know that you never want to go through a RIF, but you did it way before everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine that moving fast is a big advantage and keeps your people happy. So as a people leader, how do you stay ahead of the game? Like, is there somewhere specific that you're looking for information? It sounds like there's a few people that you're listening to, and you're sort of, taking inspiration from what they have to say and putting your own little remix to it. So curious to hear how you're staying ahead of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say the strongest leaders out there are those that are constantly observing and looking for trends, looking for like nuggets that might exist. And so I love being able to connect with other leaders. I love like it from like a society perspective, understanding what trends are happening. I'm a big advocate for therapy. So I would say 90% of my conversations with my therapist are around like, all right, what's happening for humans out there right now? Like philosophically, what's changing? What are the shifts? And so
I love that.
being hyper curious and also observing to be able to pick out some trends that may exist or some predictions. So when it came to COVID, BuiltIn is now a national platform, but in 2019, we were in a variety of markets throughout the United States. And so we were getting ready to do an event in Seattle, one of our markets at the time. And Seattle was like the forefront of where COVID started. And so there was like a lot of buzz, and we started hearing from customers that were like, there's like this COVID thing, like coronavirus happening, we're not sure. And so we started paying really close attention, and we actually started planning for if something happens and we have to go remote, how would we do that? And luckily for us, historically during like the Christmas, New Year break, we had all employees work remote always. And so we had some of those structures in place already to understand how we would adapt. But really proactively, we started meeting with managers, putting together a plan in case we like needed to just pull the trigger and go remote. And like I said, we were one of the very first companies in Chicago to go remote. And like a week later, a lot of companies followed suit, but they did it from a place of like, oh crap, we have to go remote. What do we do? And so reactive. And then I would say from a RIF perspective, and a lot of this credit goes to Maria Katris, our CEO, who's just like this beautiful visionary genius, paying really close attention to what's happening in the market, like staying close to our investors, starting to see some of the downturns and, starting to see some companies going into hiring freezes and just paying really close attention. And for me, like I said, like I like to be a proactive planner. I was ready June to be like, do we start modeling out if we have to make a shift? And like, that's not something that I want to do, but I've done more risks than I like to say throughout my career. And so you just start to like become aware of some of those trends. And I wanted to do it from a place of it being planned versus it being reactionary. And so we kind of understood what some of the triggers were going to be to have to like move forward with that riff. And so not feeling so pressured. It's still never something that we wanted to go through. Like really stinks. We hired a lot of really incredible people, went through really incredible growth. It's inevitably like a huge change curve that we need to go through now. But for us, we never wanted to do it close to the holidays. There's so many companies who are doing that right now. And that's just like a poor feeling. And I think some of our employees were kind of shocked when we did it so early, just because it wasn't, there may be a couple of companies here and there, but then talk about like the boom of November of every huge enterprise company out there, like going through the rifts. It was like, okay, well, we probably would have had to cut deeper if we waited. So, never wanted to do it, but also glad we did it when it felt like the right timing for us.
Yeah. Being somebody that was affected by rifts in November, like it's never fun to be let go, but it would have been nice if it were earlier in the year. I feel like it's tough looking for a job in December or November. You have the holidays coming up, you have a bunch of gifts that you have to buy. It's like the most expensive time of the year, it feels like.
It's a largest percentage where so many people are not even working. They're taking time off.
Yeah.
And then also just the piece, like again, it's so heartbreaking seeing all of these stories about the rifts. And I also am just a naturally optimistic person of like, it will be hard. And I know folks will find really great opportunities out there, but it's really hard too on the people who have to put the rift together. And I think especially, I'm really grateful for LinkedIn and the platform and people feeling comfortable enough to say like, hey, I got laid off, because I've seen some really incredible connections and new opportunities take place. And also it's like pretty heavy on HR teams. Like I know inevitably it's natural that if an HR person is participating in that conversation, you're going to like be pissed at them. And so my teams had to carry a lot of like grief and guilt over that. And so to any HR folks out there that are listening, like I see you and this sucks. And if like none of your leaders have said to you, thank you for everything that you've been doing, like I know this is heavy, like thank you. I see you. This sucks. Like all of it's really hard. And I'm glad that we went through it a little bit earlier, because holiday seasons are hard for a lot of people. And so to have to carry that right now, I think would just be, it would break. Like we've seen a lot of HR leaders leave the space in the last 3 years because it's exhausting, right? It's a lot to carry. And so thank you to everybody who is dealing with the really hard stuff. You do not get thanked enough.
I was talking to my therapist a few weeks ago, and I mentioned that the holidays, for whatever reason, like I get into like this weird funk, and she's like, you're not the only one. She was like, this is the busiest time of the year for therapists. She was like, I literally don't have any openings. You have to book me weeks in advance. So I think that's the perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about next. So I've seen several of your posts on LinkedIn about mental health, and I think you were even named a modern health hero. Is that right?
Yes.
Congrats on that. And this is such a personal issue for, many people out there, not just leaders. Both Stephen and I have our own personal stories with mental health and why the topic is so near and dear to our hearts. But if you don't mind us asking, why, like, what's your personal story with this? Like, is there any specific reason why this is so important for you as a leader?
Mm-hmm. So I've always just been really fascinated by personal reflection. I think that, part of my undergrad was psychology. And so just that whole realm I've been really fascinated by. And I can recognize I have a sister with special needs. And so just kind of like talking about what you're going through has always been a core part of my family, and recognizing that when you talk about things, there's an opportunity to shift. And like also the sense of like, everybody has similar feelings about things. It might not be the exact same experience, but like we can all relate to feeling alone. We can all relate to feeling angry. And so that's just naturally been something that I've grown up with. I also am a certified coach. And so just like the idea of reflection and development empowering is something that I'm really drawn to. That being said, I think that the best leaders out there are the ones that are the most self-aware. And that happens through that reflection. I think like I'm of the mindset that I want to like destigmatize mental health and therapy, because everyone can use a therapist. Like literally everyone. If you think about like therapists are required to have therapists of their own. Like if you are in the HR function over the last 3 years, you have dealt with some heavy shit, pardon my French, but like shit is the right word to use.
It is.
And like, if you don't, there is no HR for HR. Like I have no HR person that I can go to be like, hey, help me out with this. And so I like therapy for me is so important. And I also think that like, I'm a big advocate for also having a coach. And obviously there's a financial burden associated with that. So like, I recognize my privilege in that statement. But, you mentioned Modern Health, which I'm a huge fan of. So Modern Health, essentially we are customers of Modern Health, but they're a platform that provides therapy and coaching services for companies. And so the package that we have, all of our employees have access to 6 therapy sessions and 6 coaching sessions annually. And there's different tiers. You could have more than that. You can offer it for dependents. And just having that outlet is twofold. One, it allows our employees to be able to get support. And it also takes a little bit of the pressure off of my team, who often like, we feel like therapists sometimes. And that's part of why the reason why like I got into this field, because I care deeply for humans, but it's a lot to carry sometimes. And so
it's too much. It's too much.
It's too much. And I think like in my ideal world, like everyone has a therapist, and from the sense of like you work out to feel good, and like that becomes or like you eat well to feel good, versus like working out to lose weight, or like eating well to lose weight. Like that is definitely a perk, but like it doesn't have to get to that state. So meaning like I went through some shit, which is why I had my therapist at first. And now I'm able to just maintain. And it's like having a personal trainer for your mind that I am so grateful for, because it keeps me sharp. She challenges me to reflect on things. She's able to like mirror back what I'm experiencing. And so I highly recommend.
I 100% agree with you. Everybody should have a therapist. Have y'all seen that new Jonah Hill documentary on Netflix?
No,
So
No.
he does a documentary about his therapist. And one of the things that his therapist says is that there's 3 aspects of reality. And those 3 aspects are pain, uncertainty, and constant work, and how everybody experiences these 3 aspects of life. So I don't know. I feel like everybody has their own struggles, even if you can't see it. And I think that everyone would benefit from therapy, even if you have a good life and you don't think that you need therapy. I think you still probably would benefit from it. Question on the coaching sessions. So how does that work? So let's say you're, a junior marketer. Are you going to be paired with somebody that is, a more senior marketer that now partners with Modern Health, or how does that work?
Yeah, great question. I get no personal endorsement for endorsing Modern Health, just to be clear. I'm just a really big fan. So essentially what you do, it's a really easy to use platform. If you're an employee, you go in and it does a little like survey to kind of understand like where you're at, asks a couple of questions, and based on that, it will recommend and say like, based on your responses, we think it would be best for you to start with time with a therapist or time with a coach. So when I filled it out for me, I had the coach route. And so I could still choose and go the therapy route as well. But for me, it was like, we want you to start here. And then from there, it gave me several options of coaches that I could set up time with. And so like, there'd be a little bit of bio and what they specialize in. I went as far as like looking all of them up on LinkedIn and trying to understand their background, who they worked with. And then literally like within the platform, just like click a button, schedule, it sends you reminders, it tells you what to expect. And it was great. It was really nice to be able to have that outlet and have it so easily available. I think a lot of people leaders out there will relate to the fact that like most companies have employee assistant programs, but usually the adoption rate's like 11%, super low. Modern Health's average adoption rate's like 35, I think 30. But if you've heard feedback from employees, EAPs can be really disappointing. You are struggling with something, and you might call the EAP and they give you like a list of therapists maybe that you can go to. And right now, during the mental health like crisis that's happening right now, they all have wait lists. And so like, how are you getting that support that you need? And Modern Health allows us, like, I think my coaching appointment got scheduled within like a week and a half.
I think that to me, that would be like a really key part is that ease of access, because you're right. And Daniel mentioned this earlier. I have so many friends that have called me and they're like, hey, I think I've heard you mention something about seeing a therapist or a counselor. People always want to call it a counselor. And I'm like, yeah, I have a therapist, and they want a recommendation. And I feel bad because I know, just because I've recommended to so many people, that, the wait list can be very long, and sometimes the situation you're in requires someone urgent to talk to about. And so I think that's just such an awesome thing to have access and to give access to your employees.
I also think, so I try as often as I can to talk proactively about therapy. And one of the things that I did a year or two ago with BuiltIn is like I am not a therapist, so I am not like specialized in this. However, if anybody is curious about like how I found my therapist, like what my journey has been, like I'm happy to set up time. And I've had over 20 employees reach out. And I have like these notes that I keep in my like happy folder of employees just being like, I found a therapist. This is like life changing. And I'm like, that's honestly like, I could die happy right now. That's like the biggest honor
so
ever.
Awesome.
I don't know if this is too much to ask, but would you be comfortable sharing that, and we could put it in the show notes?
Sharing a note?
Oh, I thought you have like a list of like how.
So I'm happy to like create something, but
you don't need to.
Okay. But
I thought you had like a
what
document that you were sharing
to employees, and this is a true story. So I think probably one of the early fears around considering therapy is like, oh my God, what are we going to talk about? Am I just going to like cry? Like, is this going to be like too hard? And then I think the next very real fear is that like, is this going to be the right fit? And I think that's the biggest hurdle with therapy. And then you are like, all right, okay, I think I could do this. I'm going to move forward. How the hell do you find a therapist? And so what I did with my employees is like sit down and I'm like, here's how I found my therapist. And true story, my first 2 therapists in Chicago was a bad fit. Like I had one therapist tell me, you're like the most put together 30-year-old I've ever met. Why are you here? And I was like, oh my goodness, this is like not what I'm looking for. And I moved to LA and found the therapist I still have today, who's just like the best match. And I'm so grateful for that. But like just acknowledging you might not mesh with your first therapist. And what are the questions that I asked to like understand the partnership of what I was looking for? And I try to just share those stories as often as I can. And like, navigating, I highly recommend going to psychology.org and like searching for therapists there and like looking for specializations and like different things that you feel like would give you the best self-love and self-care. But I acknowledge it's very daunting to like start the process of therapy, which is why I really like Modern Health, because it makes it a little bit more accessible and just easier.
So one of my main like visions and one of the main reasons why I agreed to join Daniel in launching this podcast was to kind of cast a light on all these amazing things that have been shared with me over the years. Because I love everything you're saying. You're speaking my language, and it's like I could go on for hours about this because I feel so strongly. I've talked to Daniel and I have had hours and hours of personal one-on-one conversations about this, and it's just such an important thing. And so oh my God, we've got to have you back again to just talk. I think like on this topic,
I will gladly.
It's something that it's a conversation we need to have. We can't talk about this enough, in my opinion. So thank you for sharing your story. Like I said at the beginning, this goes fast, and I can't believe we're already there. It's time to get to the rapid fire questions, which means we're coming to the end of our conversation. So I'm going to jump right in. So the first question for you is, how do you define a modern people leader? What are the traits and characteristics?
Ooh, good question. I would say somebody who is naturally curious, reflective, and inspired by the opportunity to empower individuals.
Nice. I like that. All great traits. If you could go back in time and talk to a 22-year-old Kelly, what career advice would you give yourself and why?
Good question. I would say it's actually advice that was given to me around age 22 from my former head of HR, was to treat every opportunity as an opportunity to learn. Like, you can look at things and say, this sucks, I don't want to do it. Or you can look at it from the lens of like, there's growth that will come out of this. Even if it's to learn not what to do, there's growth in every single interaction, opportunity, tough relationship across the board.
Oh my God. And why is it always that the growth always comes with challenge? And then for me, it's always the hard things that bring me the most growth. Love that.
Everyone across the board.
Wish it could be different, but that hasn't been the case. So my last question for you is, if you could fix any HR people problem with a magic wand, what would it be and why?
I would say more budget, but I think like that's actually not solving what I'm looking for, which is better HR technology. Like, we've been behind the curve. Like, sales technology, awesome. HR technology is picking up significantly. Like, big fan of Noetic. But there needs to be a little bit more of a pickup. And so I'm excited to see, there's still a lot of manual stuff that I do. Excited to see more and more innovative technology coming to the forefront for folks out there.
Stephen, who was it that we recently had on that said something very similar?
I don't know, but
Jessica.
Every HR leader out there.
Yeah, we need to bring you and a couple people back and talk about HR tech.
We really do. It's definitely like 2 out of the last 3 guests we've had have answered that way. So noted, and perfect group topic.
Cool.
All right. So last 2 questions. Who should we bring on to the show next? Like, if you had to nominate 1 or 2 people, who would those people be?
So I will throw a little bit of a curveball in this answer and not just give you a people leader. I would say Diana Chapman, who is one of the founders of Conscious Leadership Group. So Diana and Jim Dethmer are the 2 co-founders. And so they do conscious leadership work. So they work with different teams, they work with leaders out there. I'm a certified conscious leadership coach, so I'm a little bit biased in that. But for me, when I was first introduced to this work, probably about 8 years ago, it was that realization of the most successful leaders are the ones that are most self-aware, and their work, that's the premise of their work. And so Diana's been on like the Tim Ferriss podcast. Like she's just like super fascinating and like a ball of energy. And she just gets it. So I think like all people leaders would benefit from hearing from her. And I think you guys would have just a blast.
All right. So my favorite part of every episode, one word or phrase close. So we can all respond with a word or phrase from the episode. Could be anything really. So, and I'll go first. Again, I'm going to say proactive. I feel like that was a common thread throughout our conversation. And I'm really curious whether you're proactive in both your professional and personal life. That was something I was going to ask earlier. I don't know if we have time for that, but I'm going to go with proactive.
We don't. I can answer that. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. I'm going to just keep the flow going. My one phrase close is self-care. I'm so glad that came up and that we had that conversation.
Love it. I will go with energized because that's how I'm feeling right now. And so like plug to all those people leaders out there listening, like just you've dealt with a lot. Thank you. I see you. And make sure you take the time to like connect, like chat with other people leaders. Just like don't always worry about solving all the problems and just like play and have fun and practice thought leadership.
Yeah, my backup would have been community. I feel like I've used that one before, but I shout out, to your comment and to you for creating community and doing the things you're doing. But for those out there that are having a tough time, we're here. Leverage your community and the people out there in your life. Well, thank you so much, Kelly. That was a really fun conversation, and we really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me. I had a blast.
Thank you. Talk to you later.
Bye.